It is a July morning in 1964 on County Road 6 outside Tipton, Indiana, and my grandmother Della is cutting sage at the end of the herb row because the sage came into blossom that very week. She will tie those stems with kitchen string into a bundle no thicker than her wrist and hang it upside down from a nail in the back porch rafter. And the flavour in that one bundle would embarrass the $5 jar of dried sage the supermarket sells today. So I will say it plain. Stop buying dried herbs. My grandmother picked hers in blossom, and she never bought a jar of dried herbs in her life. Folks assume the store jar is weak because drying wrecks a herb. Drying did not wreck that jar. The calendar did. A herb cut at the wrong time has already sent its flavour somewhere you cannot follow, and no drying, no chopping, no pretty label will bring it back. Timing is the whole secret, and the rule fits inside one sentence written down in 1832. The spice aisle would rather you never heard that sentence. It keeps a wall of 40 little jars of dust, and it gets away with the price on the sticker because nobody standing in front of that wall was ever told the rule. 6 things today, in order: the rule itself and why it works, the hour of the morning that matters, the way the bundle hangs, the test that tells you it is done, then number 5, a piece of arithmetic the spice aisle prays you never sit down and do. And number 6, the one honest warning you will not get from anybody with something to sell you. If you are new to this porch, this is where we spend less, waste nothing, and keep the kitchen wisdom the supermarket would rather you forgot. So hit subscribe and settle in. Now, the rule. In 1832, a woman named Lydia Maria Child published a housekeeping book called The American Frugal Housewife, written for families who had to count everything twice. And somewhere past the advice on brown bread, she set down 21 words about herbs. I will give them to you exactly as she wrote them. Herbs should be gathered while in blossom. If left till they have gone to seed, the strength goes into the seed. You do not have to take my word for it. That book stayed in print for decades. It has been free to read for years, and anybody can look those words up in an afternoon. I would be glad if you did. That is the whole mechanism told straight. A herb plant spends its summer working toward one job, which is making seed. While the plant is still in flower, the strength, which is to say the flavour, everything you grow the plant for, is sitting in the leaf. Once the blossoms finish and the seed begins to set, the plant starts moving that strength out of the leaf and into the seed, the way a family packs the good china first when it is leaving a house. Cut the herb just as the flowers open and you catch it at full strength. Wait until the flowers have gone over and your drying leaves the plant has already emptied. And that is the store jar in one line. Leaves left too long, cut somewhere far away on a factory schedule by people paid by the ton and not by the taste. You will know the moment when you see it. Sage sends up spikes of blue-purple. Thyme hazes over pink. Basil raises a green spire with the first white flowers barely open at the bottom. Dill spreads those flat yellow umbrellas. Oregano knots up pink. Mint lifts little lavender towers. The week you see the first colour is the week, not the month before, when the leaf is still building, not the month after, when the seed has started collecting its inheritance. Cut in blossom, and what you dry at home will be twice as strong as anything you can buy. I know how that sounds, Set a jar of my sage against a jar from the aisle, and your nose will settle it in one breath. And I will be fair about the other side. The store jar will not hurt you. It is just weak, and it was weak before you ever paid for it. And before anybody tells me they have no garden, this rule never asked for one. Sage will live in a bucket by the back door. Thyme will hold a window box like it pays rent. Basil is happy in a coffee can on a fire escape. The notion that you need an acre and a green thumb is the spice aisle's favourite bedtime story, and it has kept generations of good cooks buying dust while a $2 packet sat waiting at the hardware store. I have read Mrs. Child's sentence out loud to more than one visitor at this table, and I always watch the same thing cross their face. A slow inventory of every jar they ever paid for. My neighbour Carol Ann went home from this table, looked hard at her spice rack, and brought me back a grocery sack with 9 jars in it for the compost pile. 21 words, written when Andrew Jackson was in the White House, and they beat the whole spice aisle. Della obeyed the week. She was every bit as strict about the hour, and the hour is the second thing. My grandmother did not carry a watch to the garden. She carried the back of her hand. After the breakfast dishes she would walk the row and lay her muckles against the leaves, and if they came away cool and damp, she went back inside and found something else to do. The summer I was 8, I walked behind her with the bread basket and held each bunch while she tied. She tied every knot herself. My job was keeping the bundles off the ground and out of the dust, and I took it as serious as church. The rule is morning after the dew has dried. On a July morning in Indiana, that usually means somewhere around 9, but you go by the leaf, not by the clock. The dew, half of that rule, is the half that can save a batch. Dew is water, and water's the one thing you must never tie into a bundle. A stem cut wet goes into the bunch damp. The damp settles into the middle where air cannot reach, and 3 days later you have fur where you wanted flavour. Remember that, because it comes back at number 6, and at number 6 it stops being about flavour. And a rained-on morning counts the same as a dewy one. Wet is wet, whether the sky did it or the night did. Give the row a day to dry its feet, and cut tomorrow instead. As for what to cut, take whole stems, long enough to tie, and take less than you think you need. 4 or 5 good stems of sage is a winter of Sunday dressing. A dozen stems of basil is more sauce than most families cook. And know what you are cutting for, because these 7 earn their nail. Sage is the dressing and the sausage gravy. Thyme is the pot of beans and the roast chicken. Basil is August tomatoes in January. Dill is the potato salad. Oregano is the Sunday sauce. Mint is the iced tea and the new peas. Parsley is the boiled potatoes and half of everything else. 7 herbs, 7 jars, you will never buy again. My own sage went up on the porch rafter yesterday morning. 4 small bundles cut right at the first blue, and the mint by the pump is next the day it shows me a flower. Della never once rushed a wet row. The dew was her clock, and it never ran fast. What you do in the 10 minutes after the cut, the third thing, decides whether the strength you just caught stays caught. The bundle wants to be small, and it wants to be loose. No thicker than your wrist, same as Della's, and looser than looks right, so the air can walk clear to the middle. A fat, tight bundle dries proud on the outside and stays damp at the heart, and you already know what damp does. Tie the stems with string or a rubber band, and hang the bundle upside down, each bundle on its own nail. Air between them, never crowded. Now, where? You are looking for 4 things at once: warm, dry, airy, and out of the sun, and the last one is the one that surprises people. We are raised to believe sun dries things, and it does. It also bleaches the flavour right out of a leaf, the same way it fades the front room curtains. A herb dried in a sunny window comes out pretty as a postcard and tastes like the memory of itself. And dry means dry air too. If the kettle steams all day in that room, pick a different room. Shade, warmth, and moving air, those 3 do the job. Every July of her life, my grandma's kitchen ceiling grew a second garden, upside down. Sage over the wash bench, thyme by the flower bin, dill over by the door where it could shed and bother nobody. Mint hung apart, over by the pie safe, because mint perfumes everything that sleeps under it. Bundles went up 1 week and came down 2 weeks later, all summer long, and the room smelt like the outdoors had moved in to stay. You do not need her rafters. A cup hook inside a cupboard door, a nail over the pantry doorway, a wire hanger in the spare room closet with the door cracked open. Any spot where air moves and sun cannot reach will do the same work her ceiling did. Sunshine is for tomatoes. Shade is for sage. Then comes the hardest part, which is leaving it alone. The 4th thing is how you know when the waiting is over. 1 to 2 weeks is the span. In a dry stretch, the leaves can be ready in 7 or 8 days. In a muggy one, they will want the full 2 weeks, and maybe a day or 2 past it. The leaf itself will tell you, and this is the test. Reach up and pinch one between your finger and thumb. If it crumbles at a touch, it is done. If it bends, it is still holding water and it needs more time. Crumble means keep. Bend means wait. When the bundle passes, take it down over a clean sheet of paper. Pinch the top of each stem and run your finger and thumb down against the grain, and the leaves rain off clean. Strip them into a clean dry jar and screw the lid down tight. Any jar with a tight lid will do. The mustard jar you washed out is every bit as good as anything sold for the purpose. Then comes the part nearly everybody gets wrong. That jar goes away from heat and away from light, and that rules out the 2 most popular spots in the American kitchen. Not the shelf above the stove, not the pretty rack in the sunny window. Della carried her filled jars out to the springhouse shelf, cool and dark as a root cellar. And your dark cupboard is the same idea moved indoors. 2 different jobs, 2 different rooms. Drying wants warm, moving air. Keeping wants cool, still dark. She never let one borrow the other's. And write the month on the lid before you put it away. You will want that date later, and number 6 is where I tell you why. There is a jar of last July's thyme in my cupboard today, lid dated, dark as a cellar, and it still smells green as the day it crumbled. Crack a jar like that some February evening while the dressing bread dries on the counter, and July comes up out of it before the lid is all the way off. And now the arithmetic, number 5, just as I promised at the start. This spring at the hardware store in town, a packet of sage seed cost me $1.89. Anywhere in this country, a packet of herb seed is $1 or $2, and that is the entry fee. Now walk those $2 over to the spice aisle and look at the wall. 40 little jars, $5 and change apiece, 6 for the name brands, and not one label on that wall will tell you what week the leaf was cut. Measured volume for volume, The dried herbs on that rack cost 10 times what the packet costs, and more. I am not stretching a number for effect. Stand the two side by side any way you care to, per jar, per ounce, per year, and the rack loses every time. 7 packets cover every herb I named at the start: mint, sage, thyme, basil, dill, parsley, oregano. Somewhere between $7 and $14 once against that wall every year for the rest of your cooking life. Say your kitchen empties 6 of those little jars in a year. There went $30, gone quiet as a pilot light. And next year it goes again. The packets you bought once in April are still feeding the rafter. I will be honest about what the packet asks in return, because Della raised me honest. It asks for a sunny spot, a watering can, and the patience to wait for a blossom, nothing else. And while you are deciding, the spice aisle goes on selling leaves harvested on a factory schedule instead of a blossom schedule, dried who knows when, sitting under store lights, losing a little more of what little they had every month they wait. What that shelf really sells, if you follow it all the way down, is your not knowing one rule from 1832. That is the product, your not knowing. One warning that belongs with the seed packets. Mint and its cousin lemon balm will not stay where you put them. My grandmother grew her mint in an old bucket with the bottom locked out, sunk into the ground clear to the rim, and that bucket wall stopped the runners cold. I did not listen. In the summer of 1998, I set mint straight into the open bed by the pump, and I spent the next 3 summers digging it back out of the beans. Plant mint in the buried pot or a bottomless bucket, or it will own the bed in 2 seasons. And 1 more penny out of the same pocket. When the nights begin to cool at the end of August, sow 1 more short row of parsley. The National War Garden Commission put out a pamphlet in 1919 that taught successive planting, a fresh, short sowing every 2 or 3 weeks, so something is always coming in, and a late row of a cold-tolerant herb like parsley keeps fresh cutting on the table deep into fall, after the summer row is tired. If you want this rule, and the rest of Della's garden shelf set down on paper, the little book I put together is linked under this video, and that is all I will say about that. $1.89 against a 40-jar wall. Arithmetic that lopsided does not need my help. Before you head out with the scissors, though, number 6, the warning. And I want you to take it exactly as seriously as I give it. Everything I have shown you today runs on your honour, because a herb dried at home has no preservatives in it at all. There is no factory step between your rafter and your supper, which is the whole point, and also the responsibility. So here is the gate my grandmother ran every bundle through, 3 parts. First, the fog test. The morning after you lid a jar, look at the glass. If it has fogged, the leaves were not dry enough, and the jar is telling you so. Open it, spread the leaves back out, and give them a few more days, or the batch will mould. The same goes for a hanging bundle that feels damp when you squeeze it. Damp is the enemy from the first cut to the last lid. It is the dew rule from the second thing, wearing a different apron. Second, the nose test. A good jar smells herby, green, like the plant standing in the row. If a jar ever smells musty instead, like a damp basement instead of a garden, do not cook with it. Do not pick through it. Do not rinse it and hope. Throw the jar out, all of it. I know throwing food away runs against everything this porch stands for, and I am telling you to do it anyway. That is how serious a musty jar is. Third, the smell clock. Even a perfect batch does not keep forever. Lids tight, jars dark, and the day a batch loses its smell, replace it. An empty smell means an empty jar, no matter how full it looks. This is why the month went on the lid back at the fourth thing, so next July you know which jars are due to come down and be filled fresh. And when you are not sure, the answer is always the same. Dry it longer. 3 more days on the nail cost you nothing. A jar lidded early can cost you the batch. I will tell on myself. 2 Augusts ago I jarred a batch of basil 2 days early because company was coming, and by morning the glass had fogged up like a November window. By Friday it smelled musty instead of sweet, and the whole batch went out. I have not hurried a jar since. Your nose is the only inspector this kitchen has. Let it work. So here is the method in one breath. Cut it in blossom, cut it after the dew, hang it small and loose in the shade, jar it when it crumbles, and trust your nose over your hurry. Out on my porch, yesterday's 4 sage bundles are hanging from the same kind of nail Della drove, and by County Fair week they will rustle when the screen door swings. Some of those leaves will be Thanksgiving dressing. Some will still be opening like July in the middle of February. 62 years sit between her bundle and mine, and the rule has not aged 1 day. If left till they have gone to seed, the strength goes into the seed. One sentence from 1832 still outworking that wall of 40 jars. Somewhere between Della's porch and yours, a country traded the rafter for the rack, and it has been charged 10 times over for the trade ever since. You do not have to keep paying for it. The blossoms are open right now, and the scissors are already in your drawer. This is the exact week that rule was written for. Now, before you go, what hung from your mother's or your grandmother's kitchen ceiling in summer? Tell me the herb she dried every year and what she put it in, because I read every comment on this porch, and those memories are half of what keeps it standing. This is Granny Pearl, and I will leave the porch light on for you.